Vosges as the riders headed out of town again in rain. And by the day's end, the riders will have completed almost a third of the distance to Paris. Hello again and welcome to our 1 hour coverage today of the Tour de France. The riders now have 2 full weeks before the finish on the Champs-Élysées. Behind me here, the finishing line just on the outskirts of Besançon. And we wouldn't really have expected the riders to be quite so frisky this morning as they've turned out to be. A series of attacks has left one rider alone in the lead. It's Michel Vermote, the Belgian rider who races on the French RMO team. After 50 kilometres, he has a lead of 45 seconds. We'll catch up with him very shortly. Yesterday ended the first 7 days of the Tour de France, and what an exciting opening week it's been. And Gary Imlach can remind us about it.
Set against the 21st century backdrop of Futuroscope, the Tour started with a small technological step for Le Mans kind. The one-piece handlebar was new. The question was, would it be the old Greg? The answer seemed to be that it might, as the champion started well. Not as well as Thierry Marie, though, of the Castorama team. He took first place in the first yellow jersey of the Tour. Course workers, meanwhile, took down the start banner after the wind got up. And Jörg Müller took the checkered flag for the wackiest first day haircut. The first stage proper saw an opportunistic break by 4 riders pay instant dividends. Bauer, Marsen, Pensek and Chapucci were the men who went clear and stayed there, despite the efforts of French farmers who resurfaced the road with sheepskins in the Tour's first protest. Marsen took the stage while Steve Bauer took the yellow jersey and, more importantly, a 10-minute lead over the Tour's big guns, whose tactical error had let him get away. And that was all before lunch. In the afternoon, 7-Eleven continued the good work, protecting Bauer's lead with their best ever time trial. There were more protests on stage 3, largely from sheep hijacked by riders for publicity purposes. Out on the road, the course was blocked again, this time by a product more associated with bulls. Ariostia had their own ideas about how to stop the peloton speeding. In the tactical move of the week, they put up a rolling roadblock, allowing Moreno Argentin to take his first stage on his first ever tour. Sadly, though, 2 days later, he was out after a fall. 15 kilometres from Le Mans Saint-Michel, the pack went down on the road and 2 of the favourites went down the field. Caught behind the crash, Delgado and Fignon both lost vital time on the leader, Steve Bauer. It never spits, but it pours for Laurent Fignon. After 124 kilometres of the Tour's longest stage, he was out of the rain and the race with a calf injury. The American 7-Eleven team flew the flag for the full 301 though, celebrating Independence Day and their continued possession of the yellow jersey. Back at the team hotel, Steve Bauer wore a Stetson for the press and kept quiet about the fact that he's really Canadian. On Thursday, the riders relaxed and let the plane take the strain as the Tour switched across to Sarrebourg. Once they got there, the new Buckler team won their 3rd stage of the race through Jelle-Nijdam. Good teamwork by Zed paced Ronan Ponsek back into 2nd spot behind Bauer after a crash. And Dmitry Konyshev became the first Soviet rider ever to wear the King of the Mountains jersey. Saturday's time trial was the chance for the favourites to close on Steve Bauer. The man expected to take up to 3 minutes off the yellow jersey holder was Greg LeMond, but his one piece only took him through the water 32 seconds faster. The man who did make up nearly 3 minutes on the leader was Raul Alcala, who announced himself as the rider in form and the climber to boot as the Tour prepares for the mountains.
Raul, today everybody was expecting Greg LeMond to win. Did you expect to beat him?
Greg is he's riding very well, but I don't know what's happening with him. I think today was more fast enough in him. But I was riding in the rain. I don't take so much risk in the last 10 kilometers, but maybe the road was dry and maybe made the best, more progress in the time.
And now that you've taken back nearly 3 minutes on Bauer, do you think now that you have a very serious chance to win the Tour de France?
Yeah, I say in the beginning I was so serious for this race in that moment.
An absolutely marvellous ride that was in the time trial by Raul Alcala. The shockwaves now have gone through the peloton of the Tour de France. Let's just have a look now in relationship to Steve Bauer's overall lead. What sort of damage that time trial did to his yellow jersey. Alcala gains 2 minutes 43 seconds. Miguel Indurain a minute and 19. Gianni Bugno, winner of the Tour of Italy, 56 seconds gain. Delgado 38 seconds, but Greg LeMond, who beat Bauer, by the way, by 2 minutes 50 seconds in a time trial at Rennes last year, he gains only 32 seconds. He'll be very disappointed. Ronan Pensek pulls back 17 seconds, and Eric Breukink a mere 3. The big losers, Sean Kelly loses 12 seconds. Fabio Parra won't be too disappointed with 38 seconds lost because he climbs better. Charlie Motte loses almost a minute. Stephen Rooks 1 minute 15. Our own Robert Miller a massive 2 minutes and 6 seconds, and Stephen Roach will be terribly disappointed. 2 minutes 13 seconds his loss. Andy Hampston 2 minutes 39 seconds. So let's have a look then what that has done now to the overall classification this morning. Steve Bauer keeps his yellow jersey. His lead over Ronan Pensek is halved to 17 seconds. Chiappucci and Masson hold on to third and fourth, but they, I am sure, will disappear as this race goes on. Raul Alcala gained most. He's now fifth overall, 7 minutes 19 seconds behind Bauer. Gerrit Zollefeld is sixth. Greg LeMond comes up to seventh, but still remains 10 minutes 9 seconds behind. Uwe Ampler, the East German rider, in his first Tour. You know, he told me in January he could win the Tour in 2 years. Look at this, he's lying 8th in his first attempt. Ekimov is 10th, Eric Breukink is 11th. Indurain made good gains too. He's up to 14th. And Gianni Bugno, the Italians, they say, never does well in the Tour de France. He's moved up to 15th. Delgado is 19th, and Stephen Roach has moved up to 32nd. So the situation, as you can see, is closing in all of the time. Now, Ronan Pensek closed up to 17 seconds, and yesterday in the time trial did the ride of his life. But you know, just before the time trial, he was in desperate trouble, and his team proved to be exceptionally strong, bringing him back to the race. Paul Sherwin explains the tactic.
On Friday, Ronan Pensek from the Z team, who was lying second overall, crashed. Immediately, all the domestiques in the team waited to try and pace him back into the main pack after his problems. To pace him back, they form a line, in this case a diagonal line because the wind is coming from the right. Each rider takes a turn to set the pace at the front in the wind, and then swings off, drops to the back of the line to take shelter out of the wind, where he will use 20% less energy than at the front. Usually the domestiques do all the work in the line, whilst the leader remains in the slipstream. However, such was the urgency in this situation that Pensek shared the work with his teammates. On this occasion, the effort proved worthwhile, and Pensek and his domestiques rejoined the main pack, giving him something to smile about at the finish.
The life of a domestique in the Tour de France is really a hard one, and we'll give you an even better insight into that a little later on today when Gary Imlach catches up with Sean Yates. Let's have a look at the route then before we go to the action. This is it. It's 181.5 kilometres, not too many hills today, and it starts from Epinal. It finishes here in Besançon with a downhill sprint, and I think the sprinters will love it.
But first of all, if the sprinters are to win today, they've got to catch this man here, because Michel Vermont, who broke clear this morning, is now at 110 kilometres into the stage. His lead is 9 minutes. It was 10, it's coming back, and Paul Sherwin alongside me might even want Michel to win today because you're an old teammate of his.
Yeah, well, I was in the team with Michel Vermont when he won the Isle of Wight Classic, and he's the kind of rider who's done some very good rides on his own in solitaire, which is surprising really because he's an incredible sprinter, and we saw him mixing it in the sprints in the Tour de France a couple of years ago, but it looks as if the bunch is starting to react now. The Ariostia team were chasing quite hard before, and it may well be that Michel Vermont is not going to win today's stage.
Well, we're back with the bunch here now, and as Paul Sherwin said, it is the Ariosto jerseys who are beginning to make the pace at the front. They're thinking, of course, of bringing this race down to a very tight finish indeed, because their sprinter, Adriano Baffi, is beginning to finish very quickly in this Tour, and he's starting to look as though he might threaten Olaf Ludwig if he gets a good crack at goal today. It's a very difficult finish, and it is certainly not for the nervous. It comes sweeping off a hill. It's a wide road, but the riders will touch 60 or 70 kilometres an hour just before they line up for the finish. And so it really is, for the tough sprinters, an ideal run-in. Looking down here at one of the Histor riders, looks like Wilfred Peters from the Histor team, who's trying to break clear and incite some reaction from the field. At least, Paul, they are starting a good way out from the finish to make inroads into Vermotte's advantage.
Well, there are 50 kilometres to go, and Michel Vermotte's time is coming down all the time. It was at one time, it was up to 12 minutes, and now it's coming down to 5 minutes 20 at the moment, so it's actually falling quite quickly. All the teams at the front, they know that the mountains are coming up very soon, so they'll want to win the last stages on the flats. And you can see there, near the front of the bunch there, where all the buckler riders just queuing up ready to try and get a flat stage win.
Well, just to bring you up to date with the action earlier on today, by the way, after 10 kilometres came the first small climb on the course today, the Côte des Granges, and a win there for Konachev, the leader of the King of the Mountains, the Soviet leader, and he's done himself a bit of good on that small climb today. He didn't score on the next climb, the Côte de Zetigny, which came 4 kilometres later, though. That was won by Jean-Claude Leclerc from the Spaniard Edouard Josas and the French winner of the Tour of the Economic Community last year, Pascal Lino. And some bad news too, our old favourite Alan Piper has abandoned the race this morning, and we're not too sure why. He didn't do a great ride in the time trial yesterday. It might transpire he is getting a bit of a chill.
Well, it may well be after the day's travelling in the aeroplane. A lot of riders don't take that too well. It's a very difficult day, and with all the wet, he may well have got a cold on the stomach or something like that.
Now we can see there are a lot of teams today, Paul, who are anxious to pick up this pace. Each team has their own thoughts, of course, but the Buckler team with 3 stage wins have some good sprinters. So do the Ariosto team. The Chateau d'Ax have good sprinters, and the Lotto have good sprinters. So there's a good reason here for all to work.
It's a good reason for everybody, because these are the teams that when we get into the mountains in the next few days, they'll just be taking a back seat for a while and just trying to get to the finish and make sure they don't get eliminated. Today, as tomorrow's stage as well, is possibly one of the last chances for the sprinters to get up there and take one of these stages.
Rolling, of course, down gently towards the Swiss frontier where the race goes tomorrow.
As we go back to Michel Vermotte here, he looks to be struggling quite a lot here, and this rain that they've had for most of the morning, although it's clearing up towards the end of the stage where we are at the moment, it will be very hard for Michel Vermotte to stay away, because that rain really makes the muscles heavy, and you can see he's struggling quite a lot here. You see the top half of his body is moving around quite a lot, and his head is sagging between his shoulders. There he gets time checked from the blackboard, 5 minutes and 20 seconds.
Well, he normally is a good sprinter, but he's found himself out in the front today. I remember in 1987 coming into Bordeaux, there was a tremendous crash there, and Vermotte was looking good for his first stage in the Tour, and he hit the barriers and down he went within sight of the finishing line, which caused his retirement in 1987. Since then, he's completed his last 2 Tours, 133rd in 1988 and 70th in 1989. Down there we can see the green jersey of Olaf Ludwig. And so there is Olaf Ludwig in the green jersey. By the way, no red jersey this year for the leading sprinters out on the course, and no multicoloured combine leaders jersey either. The organisers, quite rightly, deciding the race is becoming a little too complex. So Ludwig, like a number of these riders, when it comes to the mountains, are going to have to revert to roles of being super domestiques, I think, for men like Steve Bauer down there in the yellow jersey. We'll have a closer look at that when we rejoin after the break.
Test, and the personal sacrifices the likes of Greg LeMond are prepared to go through to win it are well documented. But making personal sacrifices to win is one thing. Imagine going through all the same pain and purgatory just so that someone else can claim victory, because that's what 90% of the riders here are paid to do.
Well, obviously everyone knows their limits, and if you're not born to be a Greg LeMond or a Laurent Fignon, then you have to make the most of your capabilities. and it's better for you if the one from your team does win, but then everyone in the team profits. So, you know, once you realise your capabilities, then you have to just make the most of them and help the person who has got those capabilities to win.
Steve Bauer is the man the 7-11 team believe can win, and England's Sean Yates is one of the domestiques who's helped put him at the front during a hard day's week.
Normally we get up 3 hours before the start of the race, so say the race started at 11, that means 8 o'clock wake up, just get ready, straight down to breakfast. It takes 5 minutes, where we have like a bowl of muesli which the chef has already prepared for us, and then anyone who wants other stuff like spaghetti and rice and omelettes can have that. Then you have a few croissants, a bit of bread and coffee, just generally load up for the day ahead.
The French domestique translates literally as domestic, as in servant. Once on the road, Sean's duty is entirely to his leader.
Always keeping an eye out for him. You know, if there's suddenly we see there's going to be crosswinds, then you've got to stay near him, keep him near the front, make sure he doesn't need, you know, water bottles or food or his raincoat or whatever. But just make sure he does the minimum amount of effort, really. This race is 3 weeks long, and every bit of effort he makes extra that's not unnecessary, he's gonna make it harder for him in the mountains when he really needs it the most.
If Steve Bauer crashed, Sean would have to make the ultimate sacrifice and hand over his own bike. But mostly his job is pacing, either in team time trials or on stages, especially if the leader's in trouble.
We've got to get him back up the front where, you know, where the other dangerous rivals are. Always have to keep him near the front in case if some of the other rivals see he's lagging down the back or whatever, or he's in difficulty, then they might try and profit from that. So you've obviously got to keep him near the front to minimise the danger of this happening.
All of which often means working harder than the men who are winning the race. And after a long day playing lead the leader, Sean goes straight onto the massage table.
It's very important to, you know, clean all the rubbish out of your legs, as I say, all the toxins, and generally to relax you. It's very important in a stage race. In a one-day race, it's not so bad, but in the stage race, you have to keep making those legs, you know, recuperate them, and that's one of the ways of doing it. Then dinner's 7:30.
More carbohydrates.
More carbohydrates, plenty of it. Luckily this year we've got our own personal chef, so we have a really good rice or pasta, or, you know, anything. Because the French, a lot of them aren't too hot on that. It's often a bit soggy, so we look forward to that.
That's the good stuff.
And then by the time dinner's finished, it's almost time to go to bed, you know. This is my job, you know, and it's the same as, it's not a normal job, but it's still, you know, I have to go to work each day to keep the money coming in.
What gives you job satisfaction then, seeing your leader in the yellow jersey?
Just knowing that I've done my work, you know, and ridden to my utmost, you know, my capabilities. That's what gives me. I don't care whether other people don't ride, you know. I just like doing my job, and knowing I've done it, then I'm satisfied.
A day in the life of a jobbing cyclist. Although Sean, being an excellent rider against the clock, unlike some other domestiques, does have the chance for personal glory in the individual time trials. Yesterday, though, unfortunately, as we saw, he crashed when he was going well on the road from Vittel to Epinal. And today, it's back to the grind of teamwork, which is where we go now.
And I'm sure now that Michel Vermote, a domestique who has taken his chance today, will shortly be back in this field, because the gap is now down to less than 30 seconds. It's come down from 10 minutes. Michel Vermote, who broke away after 36 kilometres today, and we're now about 30 kilometres from the finish. A tremendous breakaway, but he's tired rapidly over these last few miles, and as well, Paul, just about everybody in this race has had a little dig off the front.
Well, everybody's very keen today because a lot of the riders know it's their last chance because the mountains are coming up here. Michel Vermote hoped that the riders wouldn't chase when he came near to the finish. He hoped to build up a big enough lead, and I think probably down there somewhere they can probably see that Michel Vermote is going to be caught in the motorbikes. There is Michel Vermote now. Look at him, his head down on his handlebars, almost giving up.
So Michel Vermote has not enjoyed these last few kilometres because the course actually is quite undulating as we go towards Besançon. and he needed at least 5 minutes before he faced up to the last 30 kilometres. And the field have really been under the impetus of the Histor team, the Chateau Dax team, the Ali Austria team, the Lotto and the Panasonics, because they all feel, along with the Buckler team, that they have the winner on their squad that can handle everybody in the big sprint that will follow, I would think, if they can pick up Vermont. He's now not too far ahead of them. The field has come back together, but as you can see, it's not for very long. As soon as the lull comes, somebody attacks. It's the Chateau Dax now going out on the road again. They're thinking of their sprinter today, Giovanni Fidanza, who could possibly win the sprint, while the boys here from the Z team, this is Eric Bowyer in second place, well, they're thinking more of people like Francis Le Marchand, who might just try his chance, or Jérôme Simon. Little group forming as they try to reel in Vermont, who's going to come back rather suddenly soon. Number 164 here is Jörg Müller. There's Vermont just ahead now. They've got him in their sights. This is Calcaterra in the red jersey. Eric Bowyer. And number 164, I think it is Patrick Jacobs. Always a sad sight when the rider has taken his chance after 36 kilometres. A long day, a long attack which began in the rain. And it's got to be the most unpleasant sight in the Tour de France when you look over your shoulder and you see that lot chasing you. Straight through and out, and I doubt very much he'll hang on to the bunch either, because he was totally committed over these last few kilometres. The Z team now coming into their own, Paul. Pensek almost taking the yellow jersey yesterday off Bauer. Le Mans disappointing a little bit, but even so, they've been constantly at the front again, and now Bowyer's up here.
Well, they're riding extremely well, and they came into this Tour de France on very good form. It is a bit of a disappointment probably to most of us that Greg LeMond didn't perform very well yesterday, but at the end of the day, he still finished fifth on the stage with quite a good performance.
And, of course, he's climbed up to 7th overall in the race, but it's time that counts, and he's still a long way behind overall in the event. Alfred Ackermann was sitting at the back there. 5 riders trying to get themselves into some sort of combination here. The one thing that might help them, but it won't at all. There's 3 more going across. What I was going to say is what might help them is that they're all from 5 different teams, which means you have a number of teams trying to block at the back and ease the group away at the front. Strengthening all the time. Too many riders, I would think, coming to the front now, and the Toshibas want to split them up. So they're having a little go as well. Well, there was a rumour going around this year that if Stephen Roach didn't sign for the Toshiba team for next season, the Toshibas would disband the squad. But the latest is that in fact they are going to stay in the sport for at least 1 more year, with or without Roach. This is Roland Leclerc. They would need a stage win, I think. And the polka dot jersey comes to the fore. Dmitry Konisheyev. He is getting stronger every day of this Tour de France. He was all smiles the day he pulled on this first polka dot jersey. Slice of history, that, the first Soviet rider ever to lead a classification in the Tour de France. He shot to the fore last year when he took a great second place. Look at this. Vermont is off the back of the bunch, from the front to the back. And he's watching the race, the Tour de France, disappear ahead of him now. He'll ride home to the finish. He'll probably lose in these last few kilometres, maybe as much as 10 minutes. You gamble, Paul, and sometimes you lose.
Well, sometimes you lose, and very often you lose, because it's very difficult for one man on his own to stay away, especially on a day like this, when the bunch has been very active. Vermont would love to have won this stage today, because Charlie Motte put in a rather deceptive time trial yesterday, and it might have been good for the morale of the RMO squad.
Well, this is Konisheyev, and with him Roland Leclerc. And they've opened a little gap. This final run-in will suit Konisheyev. He's turning out to be a very strong rider over these small hills. It remains to be seen how well he will handle himself in the Alps, which we're now approaching, of course. And maybe he'll find that polka dot jersey a little bit more of a burden than a pleasure. But right now, he's enjoying his Tour de France. The Alfa Lum team here is an all-Soviet team based in San Marino. And there was talk about it becoming disenchanted with one another, the riders falling out and arguing, but it seems to have smoothed down a little bit since Konisheyev pulled on a leader's jersey. This is a major problem, though, in the Tour de France, Paul. The riders literally live in each other's pockets every day, the same routine.
Yes, it is, but both these two riders are starting to move away from the field. We've got Eric Boyer stuck in between, trying to get across. He's about 40 or 50 metres behind. They really are trying to do something at the moment, the Z team.
Leclerc, Konishev. And the field behind at the moment is not coming up to them, which is rather surprising because the Zeds have been working for something today, and for some reason they've backed off at the moment. Number of retirements today since Alan Piper abandoned the race, which is rather sad. We've also lost now Forfin, Johnny Carlson, and Alvaro Pino, and that's quite a surprise. Pino going out today. Very good climber indeed. So Konishev seems to be the stronger of the two riders here. And the field are not too far away, but there is help on its way up, and it's coming rapidly, so it's going to put 3 men in the lead. This is how you build a breakaway. Riders who take the chance come across, then all of a sudden the bunch relaxes, and it's the Buckler team. Wouldn't you know this, Paul? This is Edwig van Hooijdonk, the team leader of the Bucklers. They look every day to use a different man to win a stage with, and now they've got Van Hooijdonk trying to go clear of the field. Carreras and the Zeds are having to chase them down. Helvetia La Suisse third in line. So a good move again by Jan Ross's Buckler team. They've got 3 stage wins. And that is Edwig van Hooijdonk, who's going up to join the 3 leaders. Not a big advantage yet, but you've got to start somewhere. Van Hooijdonk almost picked up the Championship of Belgium just before the Tour de France began, but he didn't quite contact the leader then, which was Claude Coquillon, who went on to win the title. He got 20 yards from him, would you believe, and his legs gave out. He never actually caught him.
However, the Buckler team did manage to get the Dutch Championships with Peter Winnen winning. And Jan Raas was had a very difficult decision to make, because he didn't know whether to go and see the Belgian National Championships or the Dutch National Championships, because there were only 30 kilometres between the two.
And just look at the road ahead now. So a lone break today really would have had a job to survive, but Vermont wasn't to know that. If the riders can see a long way ahead and spot their quarry, they will come for you. And that is going to be working against these 3 riders. As we now roll down towards the Besançon, there's 4 more trying to chase. And I'd be very surprised now if we don't find at least one Z rider in this group, because the Z team, who are leading this Tour de France in the team section, are very, very active indeed. Greg LeMond, a little bit mystified as to why he didn't win that time trial yesterday, because he really did feel that he had ridden extremely well. Van Hooijdonk straight to the front to lift the pace. Konishev joins onto his back wheel. Roland Leclerc is the other rider. And here comes reinforcements up to the leaders now. And this is the leader, Gianni Bugno. Now this must cause some concern. Gianni Bugno, who's put himself back into the race after his time trial yesterday, has joined the leaders, and this will cause concern. It should certainly cause concern to people like Delgado, Bauer, LeMond, and those who want to win this Tour de France. And it looks to me as though the whole field have chased him down. Bugno, unlucky for the 3 there, Paul.
Very unlucky for those 3 riders, but all the riders very alert at the moment. There in the front in the yellow jersey, in the World Championship jersey, you can see Greg LeMond as the attacks are going all the time.
Well, this could be Nicky Reutemann, who's gone off the front from the Helvetia La Suisse team. But every rider here now is trying to seize upon the chance and hope that their attack is the one that the riders pay least attention to. So as Reutemann heads up the road, I'm sure this one will come together, and we've still a fair way to go, so we'll take a short break.
Olaf Ludwig. He took the points jersey on Monday and so far has managed to hold on to it. In fact, he nearly won a stage on Tuesday, but on the way into Le Mans Saint-Michel, seemed to misjudge the finishing line and was overtaken by Johan Musso. But Olaf has kept the points coming with wins in the intermediate sprints. And what's impressed people I've spoken to on the Tour is how well he's fitted into the world of professional team riding, only 6 months after leaving amateur racing in East Germany. Still no stage victory though, and the real test for Olaf is coming up this week. He hasn't had a lot of mountain experience and has certainly never ridden anything like the Alps or the Pyrenees. So the mountains are something of the unknown, and by this time next week, both he and we will know whether he's a climber or not. Today's stage is still relatively flat though, and for the latest on it, back to Phil.
And that's absolutely true, but the teamwork today has kept this race together in the end, except at the moment, Eduardo Chozas is having a dig to try and break clear. Stage winner this year in the Tour of Italy, and now aiming for one to match it in the Tour de France. And the words of Moreno Argentin come to mind. He's out of the Tour now, of course, but when he won his stage last week, he said then riding the Tour de France was like university compared with riding the Tour of Italy. We are now 15 kilometres from the finish, and Eduardo Chozas, Paul, is, of all the people, the expert of the solitary break.
Well, he's won quite a few stages in the Tour de France and lone breaks. He's also this year already won a stage in the Tour of Italy in a similar manner. But normally he wins these stages in the mountains, so it's quite strange to see him away on a flat stage like the day today. But there's still quite a long way to go, 15 kilometres. Anything can happen. There you can see Chozas at the front with a couple of riders coming across to him. Probably it looks as if it was one of the Castorama riders trying to bridge the gap there.
Well, here he is, Eduardo Chozas, had a great Tour of Italy. He finished 11th with that stage win. He's ridden the Tour of Spain this year as well, in which he finished 33rd. And now he's going for the hat-trick, or the Grand Slam of cycling, really, the top 3 tours. It takes a tremendous athlete to complete all 3 of them, which total, just the 3 races alone, total something in the region of 9,000 kilometres. And now it looks like Castorama has decided, even without Laurent Fignon, they can still contribute to this Tour de France. And coming up on the outside, looks like Bjarne Riis here, the Danish rider, who's gone ahead. You've got to keep on trying to get away from the pack. None of these riders have the ability to sprint. I think more importantly, Paul, than the big sprint sometimes is the actual nerve to take part in the sprint.
Well, that is very true. It's quite easy if you've got the nerve to stay near the front, to stay in the slipstream and keep in the first 10 or 15, but not everybody has that nerve to do that. If you can do it, it is really easy because you're following the slipstreams, but the problem is all you need is a slight movement to the left or to the right of the rider in front of you. You put your brakes on and you find yourself back in 80th position.
It shows us his progress is not as sweet as he might like it, but here comes Bjarne Riis. I think it is Bjarne Riis who's moving up towards him. And if he comes right up to him, they've got 2 strong riders at the front. He certainly looks a big rider, and I think that Bjarne is going to have a problem getting over the mountains.
Well, it probably will do, but all he's thinking about at the moment is today's stage and how he can get into Besançon. If he and Eduardo Chozas can get away together and keep away from this chasing bunch.
Field again reforming at around 13 kilometres from the finish. Still a lot of riders feel they have a chance, they can break the spirit. There's been a lot of chasing done over this last hour and a half of racing because they had to bring back Michel Vermont. It was a tremendous chase to reduce a 10-minute lead down to nothing. Vermont now, by the way, is tailed right out of the back of the field. And so there are still those riders who feel that they might have a chance to slip the field. This is Pascal Lance, the local rider racing through the Lorraine countryside the last couple of days. Did an excellent time trial yesterday. And would dearly like to say goodbye to his home area with a stage win in his first Tour de France.
Well, these are all riders who are not renowned for their sprinting ability, and it's their only chance to try and win a stage in the Tour de France by breaking away on the run-in. It looks, though, as if this breakaway by Pascal Lance has caused a little bit of a split at the front, and there's another group of 8 or 9 riders coming across to that group that Pascal Lance has dragged clear. There we've got 10 kilometres to go. The banner you can just see in the back there. Lance looks across his shoulders, and he's not getting very much help from the Panasonic rider there. It looks as if it was Erik van Lancker, and he won't want to help at all because they'll be thinking of a victory for Olaf Ludwig. There is Christophe Leven from the Castorama rally team, just getting his breath back.
And the Weimann rider coming up there is Jan Goossens. No, it isn't. It is Michel Dernies in that chasing group. I make it 6 riders out in front here and 8 riders about to join them, which will give them a very workmanlike group of 14. It might still work just inside the 10 kilometres to go. Well, the Panasonic rider here looks like it might be Erik van Lancker, winner of the Liège-Bastogne-Liège this year. And the Lotto boys, look at this, thinking of Johan Museeuw and the green jersey of Olaf Ludwig. What a powerful piece of riding this is by the sprinters. This race, Paul, is changing so much now. The sprinters not waiting for the bunch. Ludwig here, who could win this race and hopes to finally get a stage in the sprint, has obviously countered an attack by Museeuw.
Well, he's seen he had one of his teammates in the front. He's always been omnipresent at the front of the bunch. He's seen this break going away and slipped into it, and a very good position for him because it narrows his chances down because he won't have too many sprinters in the front here.
But he's got to contend with the Lotto team, these pink-top jerseyed riders who've come up here. There's the leading group. Let's have a look down and see what the gap is like. It's still not a lot, but it's a good start. The perfect arrowhead on the front of the peloton now as they try to correct their mistake. The teams who've missed that group will now have to take up the chase because the teams who've put their men in that leading group will just sit back and watch and roll along. There's Olaf Ludwig. He must feel now if this breakaway works, this is his best chance of a victory. At 155, his danger man, Johan Museeuw, the rider who has had a first, second and third place on this race so far, challenging for the green jersey. Number 56, this rider is Jean-Claude Colotti, another good sprinter.
Well, Colotti finished second last year in Bordeaux to Etienne de Wilde, much to his disgust, but he is a very good sprinter. It looks as if we could have a very good sprint if we get to the finish, but the punch is really closing down on this group at the moment, and I don't think they really want to let this group get too far clear.
Well, noticeably absent here, Paul. No riders I can see from the PDM squad, and of course Sean Kelly has visions on that green jersey.
Well, Kelly absent as well, but also the Buckler team have missed this move as well, which is quite surprising. They would normally be really pleased to get 2 or 3 men into this group. I think the Lotto team must have put a fair burst in up that last little drag to drag this group of, looks like nearly 15 men. There's one rider coming across there. I wouldn't be surprised if that was a Buckler rider. And then there we've got the whole peloton trying to pull the race back together again.
So acceleration from the main field, missing the PDMs and the Buckler riders who have great sprinters. And there's a Buckler rider moving up on the outside of the field there and trying to get clear. We've gone back to the leaders, and Pascal Lance, maybe a little bit of inexperience here because he wants to finish in the lead group and he's giving it a lot of effort at the front. You notice that Ludwig in the green jersey is sitting off the pace, just watching at the moment to see if this attack is going to work, because if it isn't going to work, then he's going to save his energy for the big sprint. And there's a rider come on at a terrific speed there. That was Massimiliano Girotto, who's just joined from the Carrera. So another team up here now, one more team putting the brakes on at the back. This is a difficult finish in the beginning because we're heading now down into the streets of Besançon. We do a tour of the city, then we begin to leave on a short climb, and once over the top of the climb we have this big downhill run into the finish, and it just levels out with a little kick uphill as they go over the finishing line. A very difficult approach.
It really is difficult to stay at the front all through these town streets here of Besançon, and it's probably better for these riders in the front because it'd be not quite as dangerous. Amazing to see that Pascal Lance is riding on the front like that, driving away. It's amazing how much you forget tactics when you're a local rider.
Well, the adrenaline must be flowing in young Pascal's body today because he's in the lead in the Tour de France in the front group. He's the only, what they call the only regional rider in this race, and he's now passing in his own region at this moment, and he's now racing through Besançon, and he knows just about everybody will recognize him as well. Great effort. And it's a big breakaway now. The field is beginning to look a little bit worried. This is a long, long line. Good crowds in Besançon. but this route twists and changes, and this might help the leading group.
Well, that's the reason why Pascal Lance has been riding on the front there, because he has a teammate in that group, and it's Andreas Capes, the West German, who in the past has been an extremely good sprinter. So maybe Lance has gone to the front to try and keep this group away so that Capes can get up there and possibly steal this stage victory from Olaf Ludwig.
But the line in this lead is getting longer and longer, Paul. It looks as though the field are clawing the way up towards it, going across the Doub, and then we turn left. The riders have no danger of losing the way across a very complicated city here, because the crowds mark the route for them. The Tour de France, not only is it not losing any of its popularity, it's gaining it here. The crowds are bigger every day. No matter what the weather, they stand there. And after all, it's only for a few seconds before the entourage is by. Well, there you can see the complete composition of the leading group. It has swelled a little bit, and they've done well to break the string just here, because once we leave the city, we move up this little hill before the fast descent, and Ludwig must be feeling everything spot on for him at the moment, and we should see a good sprint. We should at last get a good comparison, Paul, between who is the faster of the two, Museu or Ludwig.
It looks as if the Lotto riders, there are actually 3 Lotto riders in this front group. They have a lot of confidence in Johan Museeuw, because they're the ones at the front doing all the driving. There is a Panasonic rider in that group, and he's not doing any work at all. You see, Ludwig was sat at the back before, and he's waiting to just to take advantage of the work that the Lotto riders are doing, but they're really convinced that Museeuw can win. That is why they're at the front driving this breakaway.
Down there amongst the trees on the banks of the River Doub, the riders working away. The domestiques, you see, never stop thinking. They have to work all the way, trying desperately to springboard the men of the moment up to the lead. At the moment, we have the Lotto team with 3 riders and 1 man capable of winning the sprint, Johan Museeuw, and the 2 Lotto riders are at the front of this group, keeping the pace high. They'll totally destroy themselves just to stop the field catching up, and then they hope, as they drop away, that Johan Museeuw will finish the day off for them with victory, and the champagne corks will pop tonight. So they will take as much money out of the success of Museeuw as Museeuw will himself, because as a reward for their labours, the money goes into the hat and the team shares equally. And that is why these 2 Lotto boys are giving their all now to drag this field through the streets of Besançon in the hope that Johan can finish it off for them. He's had a win, he's had a second, and he's had a third last week in the Tour, so he is most certainly a real threat to that green jersey of Olaf Ludwig.
They're all taking advantage of the work done by this Lotto squad. They really are convinced that Museeuw is the fastest rider, and it'll be a very interesting sprint to watch the duel between Museeuw and Ludwig when we get to the finish here.
So Van Eynd is on the front, Brunel is in second place, Kiefel is in third place, Pascal Lance still hovering there in fourth. Of all the people, he knows the finish best. There is Kiefel, and this here is Andreas Capes sitting at the back. This is the climb I was telling you about. We go up now towards the finish, and then very often it will be decided, Paul, on who's put the right gear on for this finish.
Well, it will, because it's quite a difficult finish to work out, because you come down a very fast descent. Most of the riders will probably put it in the biggest gear they've got, then it kicks up towards the end, and if the rider's not strong enough, he won't be able to keep that big gear going round and crack just 200 or 300 metres before the line.
Well, that was Girotto under the 2 kilometre banner who swung off the front. And attack immediately now, and this is Michel Derniche who's had a go. Michel Derniche has gone, he's chased by Capes, who sat at the back, the teammate of Pascal Lance. So Andreas Capes has gone. This is going to cause a problem now. The sprinters are going to have to go out, and go out a bit earlier, but Michel Derniche is a good rider at this sort of an attack, and he is on form too. Quickly works with Andreas Capes. Capes is a good sprinter. So Capes goes clear. Derniche takes up the chase with him, and now they're having to bring him back.
And the man doing the work to try and bring this group back was Guy Newlands from the Panasonic squad. Now that the 2 Lotto riders have been doing all the work, have dropped back a little bit, Van Lancker has decided that he'd better get this group together to give Olaf Ludwig his chance of taking a first stage victory.
So Derniche doesn't want to do the relay with Capes. It's inside. We're coming up to the kite, in fact, for the 1 kilometre to go. Then they'll flip over the top and dash down the hill. And they're having to try and pick them up from the back of the field here. That's Derniche going. Van Lancker coming up here. There's the kite, 1 kilometre to go. They're all together again now. This is going to be some sprint. And Van Lancker is the rider who's hit the front. Well, he really is no sprinter. And they're all shuffling around now trying to choose exactly where they can go. But it's Girotto who goes first. Kiefel's got his wheel. Van Lancker just gets washed away by the speed of the sprinters. He's gone to the back of the line.
You see how Olaf Ludwig there really rates the sprinting of Johan Museeuw, because Ludwig has placed himself in the wheel of Johan Museeuw. Another attack goes down the left-hand side of the road. That's Bruno Cornier going.
So Cornier, equally no great sprinter, is leading out now as they start the long, fast ride down the hill towards the line. They'll soon be into our sights in the distance. It's like an Indian charge off the mountaintop from where we're sitting, because all of the flashing lights ahead of us, and here they come now up towards the finish. Cornier making a final dash for home. Now the sprint opens, and it's Olaf Ludwig who goes. He's got Museeuw pinned on his inside. The two fastest finishes together now. Museeuw in the pink. Ludwig is coming clear. He's going to get it. He's finally got the victory he's wanted. 10 wins this season. He said, I've won 9. I'd give them all away for one win in July in the Tour de France. He's got it now. Olaf Ludwig gets the stage, the first ever stage win by an East German. Museeuw will got second place, and we think it was Jean-Claude Colotti takes third. And the field comes over, and the beaten man there, Adriano Baffi from the Alicea, who brings home the field, the sprinter who was robbed by the breakaway. He didn't take any note of. And this is how it happened. The Cornier did the best thing he could possibly do, tried to jump away just before the finish. And then that big figure of the East German rider, Olaf Ludwig, the man the amateurs are glad to see the back of, and the Tour de France is now having to learn to live with, because he easily beats Johan Museeuw and takes his first stage win in the Tour de France. And it looks like Kiefel and Colotti battled out the third or fourth place.
This then is the overall result of that big sprint. A clear win for Olaf Ludwig, the first East German stage winner in any Tour de France, pipping Johan Museeuw. And in third place, Ron Kiefel beating another good sprinter, Jean-Claude Colotti, with Andreas Kappers taking the 5th place slot. What a great finish then by Olaf Ludwig, and what a happy rider he was at the finishing line. I think, you know, practically every one of the 1,000 journalists who follow this Tour de France tried to get those very first words off him just after he came to the promotion stand near the finishing line.
I'll be very happy that it's really
fantastic.
And so now you want to take the green jersey to Paris?
Yes, I hope this, and it's another great finish for me. Great dream.
And after that comment, Olaf Ludwig told us privately that he also dreams of winning the final stage of the Tour de France on the Champs-Élysées in Paris. So quite clearly he's no fears of the Alps or the Pyrenees. Well, as you know, we chose Olaf as our rookie professional this year, and he certainly hasn't let us down. He's won a stage, and he now completes his first week as leader of the points classification in that green jersey. He got another one this evening. On Friday, which is a rest day in the Tour de France, Gary Imlach will look back over the progress of Olaf Ludwig, and don't forget, by then he will have come through the Alps as well. Let's have a look then at the overall situation. Steve Bauer today was not put under any pressure at all. He's retained all of his 17 seconds lead over Ronan Pensek. No change in the overall classification. The riders are now waiting for the next chance they can attack Steve Bauer. First-year professional